In the spring of 1754, a regiment of Virginia militia set off from Alexandria for the Ohio River under the command of a 22-year-old lieutenant colonel named George Washington. The Washington family name was well known on the Potomac River, but chiefly for its connection to a more distinguished name, Fairfax. Thomas Fairfax was the sixth and current Lord Fairfax of Cameron, in England. Besides the title, he had inherited 5 million acres in western Virginia, from which he hoped to derive an income to support his lordly manner of living. His cousin William Fairfax headed the family's American wing, with a plantation, Belvoir, on the Potomac that anchored Virginia's tidewater aristocracy. George Washington was no aristocrat, but he had come to know the Fairfaxes through proximity and marriage. The Fairfaxes lived a few miles from Mount Vernon, the Washington family home, and George Washington grew up playing with the Fairfax boys. Washington's elder half-brother, Lawrence, married into the Fairfax clan, making Washington an in-law. After Augustine Washington, the father of Lawrence and George, died when George was 11, William Fairfax took a paternal interest in the lad. George Fairfax, 8 years older than Washington, stood in as an elder brother. At the age of 16, Washington made a journey with George Fairfax across the mountains into western Virginia. The purpose of the journey was to scout the Fairfax holdings, in particular a parcel George Fairfax had his eye on. Although the death of his father had kept Washington from receiving much formal education, Brother Lawrence saw that he got practical training in surveying and the mathematical and topographic arts that underlay it, and when George Fairfax sought a companion for his scouting journey, Washington was a natural to invite along. The expedition lasted several weeks and required all the resourcefulness and stamina the two young men could summon. They endured the snow and rain of late winter and early spring, high water in the numerous streams athwart their path, short rations and miserable camping conditions, rugged and unmapped terrain, and threatening, if not downright hostile, Indians and white frontiersmen. Washington loved every minute, and George Fairfax marked him as someone who could find his way around the wilderness. He shared the opinion with his family and friends. Among the latter was Robert Dinwiddie, the acting governor of Virginia. Dinwiddie was an appointee of the British Crown, and his chief assignment in the early 1750s was securing the Ohio Valley for Britain. During the previous century, while the British were establishing footholds on North America's eastern seaboard, French explorers and soldiers had probed the heartland of the continent. They traveled by water, from the north along the St. Lawrence River, from the south via the Mississippi. In the grandiose manner of the age, French explorers claimed for the French crown all the lands drained by the two great rivers. The English, for their part, were no more restrained. Virginia's charter gave its proprietors title to a swath of land from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The inevitable result, once reality caught up with the claims, was a clash between Britain and France for control of the parts of North America where their claims overlapped. Indians and occasional Western travelers brought tales of increasing French activity in the Ohio Valley. At this point, the Virginians had little active presence that far west. Their settlements, aside from a few trading posts, were confined to the lands that sloped toward the Atlantic. But the Virginians were looking to the future. For an influential few of them, the future included the Ohio Valley in a special way. The Ohio Company of Virginia had been created in the 1740s by investors engaged in what was becoming a signature enterprise of the American economy, land speculation. The Ohio Company pulled strings in London to receive a royal grant of 500,000 acres in the Ohio Valley. The investors, who included George Washington's elder brothers Lawrence and Augustine Washington, and Robert Dinwiddie, were eager to lay hold of the lands that they might begin the process of selling parcels to actual settlers and thereby grow rich.